Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Jackie Brenner, a pre-med student who has enjoyed meeting other STEM students from all around the world through my TikTok and Discord STEMPotential. Before we get started, just a few technical terms. If your connection is lost, please simply log in again through the link you received when you registered in the Discord. Once the live viewing has concluded, we will post a link to a recording of the webinar on the STEMPotential Discord. Also, we recommend you hide all non-video participants to clear up the screen. If you'd like to ask questions, please submit a question at any time in the Q&A function at the bottom of the chat. We will collect these questions and answer as many as possible during the Q&A portion. Before we proceed with the panel discussion, I would like to give a brief introduction and background about STEMPotential. While in school, many of my fellow pre-medical students, especially women, were hesitant or even afraid of pursuing their studies and career in STEM. They lacked access to mentors and information from professionals who were already in their careers. This led me to create STEMPotential, an online Discord that provides a network for students to form immediate bonds, share unique perspectives from diverse backgrounds, and ask many questions. Discord members can act as mentors and mentees as they progress along all stages of their education, while also finding friends with common interests. We envision a community of like-minded people excited to build their networks and use every avenue to broaden their perspectives of STEM. As the saying goes, knowledge is power. Now, because March is Women's History Month, I'm hosting this two-day webinar event with a variety of female panelists, including MDs, PhDs, med students, and master's and PhD students tomorrow, to give students the opportunity to hear about the journeys of women in STEM and be inspired. And now to our panelists. Please turn on your cameras and please let us know if you're having any trouble in the chat. I am proud and humbled to have assembled a group of incredibly successful physicians. Each one will give a brief 5-minute overview about themselves, and then we will have a 25-minute Q&A session. Dr. Heather Johnson is a preventative cardiologist and has a master's of population health and a master's in medical management. Dr. Norina Ocampo, a pediatrician, is passionate about her practice and is well known for creating unique and lasting bonds with her patients and families. Now, Dr. Jessica Buco was a D1 lacrosse player at Johns Hopkins and then pursued her dreams of becoming a general surgeon with specialties in endocrine and metabolic surgery. And last but not least, Dr. Ying Meng is a neurosurgeon and is about to finish her PhD in Toronto, Canada. Now, I'm excited that we will hear directly from the panelists. So, Dr. Heather Johnson, can you please start us off?
Hello, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. And I have to say, Jackie, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is exciting. Just really briefly, everyone, I am a cardiologist and a preventive cardiologist at the Christine E. Lynn Women's Health and Wellness Institute, part of Boca Raton Regional Hospital and Baptist Health South Florida, and a clinical affiliate associate professor at the Florida Atlantic University. And Florida has been home, or Southern Florida, for just over a year. In fact, for over 10 years, I practiced at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, so originally from the Midwest where I trained. And there I did both critical care and clinical base as far as general cardiology. I served as an associate professor with a lot of teaching at the university. And I also ran a research program dedicated to young adults and cardiovascular or heart-related risk factors. And so we could chat a little bit more about this transition, but over the years, I've been very, very dedicated to preventing heart disease and heart failure. And here I'm focused a lot more as far as on women's health, community education, and community outreach. Mentoring has been a part of really something I've been very dedicated to over time. And I thank you for this opportunity to be able to present on the panel. So thank you so much. And a little bit, I saw the question about outside of medicine. In addition to exercising and having a family, I also love science fiction. So I'll pass it on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Norina Ocampo, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. This has been such a great thing that you've put together. Jackie, your mom has been keeping me informed about everything, and I've been so excited to hear this because, you know, women need to be there to help each other and to support each other. Anyway, a little background on me. I'm a pediatrician, general pediatrician. We've been in Boca Raton, Florida for almost 26 years. I have my own practice. I'm a solo practitioner, and I really just specialize in preventive healthcare. And I also like to see children with ADHD and learning disabilities, because I really have a passion to try to help these kids, to help them be successful in life. Um, I'm also a clinical associate professor with FAU, Florida Atlantic University, and also University of Miami. I love teaching the medical students. And as far as things that I like to do on the side, I love to garden. I have over 100 orchids in my yard, and I'm an avid reader, as Jackie well knows. Her mom and I are in the same book club together. I'm actually in 3 book clubs, and I enjoy cycling and running and skiing. And that pretty much covers everything.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And now Dr. Jessica Buco.
Thank you again, Jackie, for setting this up. I met Jackie when I was her lacrosse coach way back in the day, and her mom was one of my teachers when I was a med student at University of Miami. So for me, I'm originally from upstate New York, lived in Maryland for a few years for undergrad at Hopkins, and then had been down here for medical school and residency. I went back up to New York for my fellowship, but now I've been in practice. I'm in my 2nd year, so I'm a little bit more junior in my career than the other physicians. I work mostly at Bethesda Hospital here. It's affiliated with the FAU residency program. So I work with the residents and the medical students there. I actually just found out this week I'm going to be their new associate program director. So education is a big thing for me. I'm a general surgeon. My focus is on endocrine surgery. So that's thyroid, parathyroid, and adrenal tumors and disease processes. And I just had a baby about 4 weeks ago. So if you hear the newborn, she's in the other room. I apologize for that. And then I have a son who's a little under 2. So right now they're kind of my world. We're moving too, so I don't have much time for much other than that. But I do like sports, and when I have time to exercise, but it's been a little infrequent these days, unfortunately. But I'm excited to be here, and hopefully I can help you guys.
They're so adorable. And Dr. Ying Meng.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ying. I'm actually a neurosurgery resident in training at University of Toronto. I got to know Jackie's mom through the Focus Ultrasound Foundation. I do a lot of research in focus ultrasound. That's basically what my PhD as research has been about for the last 4 or 5 years. So I'm in the tail end of my residency training, so I have I can kind of share my experiences with that. Also, I have 2 young children, so that they're keeping me busy, and with training, it's hard to do much outside of all that. But with my free time, I like to do a little bit of arts and craft.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for those amazing introductions. Now we're going to move into the Q&A portion. So I prepared some questions in advance, and some people already submitted some. So let's get started. The first question is, who and what was your biggest inspiration for choosing your career?
Do you want us to continue the same order, or?
I think at this part, we can kind of let the conversation flow. So whoever wants to answer at any point would be great.
Okay, well, I'll continue, and I'll say that interestingly, I turned out, as far as a physician and particularly a cardiologist, at the end of all of this. I actually started as a major in molecular biology, really thinking I'd be focusing on a lot of sort of basic or translational research before the term translational research even existed, really. But actually, it was a geriatrician who really showed a passion as far as in patient care, and I really had a focus on prevention. And a very long story short, I enjoyed the journey and switched from research to geriatrics to preventive care, and not switch, but just enjoyed the training and the process and getting to know people. And next thing I knew, it was cardiology, which was not on my list when I began. So I think the moral of the story is really just enjoy the journey, learn from everyone, and you never know where things take you.
Well, I have to say that my high school chemistry teacher was the one who inspired me to pursue a career in the sciences. I originally wanted to do cancer research. So I was a chemistry major in college, and I started to minor in physics and math and computer science because the field of biomedical engineering was just starting to evolve. And I thought how fascinating that would be. But after doing research in the lab for 3 years, I went to NYU undergrad. I realized I was more of a people person, and as glamorous as it sounded to be doing research, my goal was to do cancer research and to help find a cure for cancer. I wasn't the type of person to be isolated all day long, and basically the research was very tedious. And so I switched gears after talking to my advisor and talking to my chemistry teacher, and she said, go to medical school. And I did. And just like Dr. Heather Johnson said, I love to learn. I would go back to medical school and learn all over again. I look forward to going to my pediatric conferences. I'm the quintessential nerd. I love to sit up front, take notes. I'm always in the front row. So yes, I am the nerd, but I love learning, and I'm constantly reading my medical journals and articles. And I just love medicine, and I just love how it keeps constantly evolving. And that's where I am today. And I would definitely do this all over again, given the choice.
So I always thought I wanted to be a doctor. Mine is, I guess I loved watching ER with my mom in her bed when I was a kid, like falling asleep. And I just thought medicine was so cool. My family's all in business and law, and nothing to do with, I have no one in medicine in my family. So I kind of always like to do something different. I got recruited to Hopkins for lacrosse, and I just thought, okay, that's great, a great medical program, and also doing my other passion. But I never knew I wanted to do surgery until I did my surgical rotation. I actually thought I was going to go into medicine or OB-GYN, and then I don't know if it's my athletic background that kind of drew me to a more procedural field, but I was definitely as green as they came in the first day in the OR, but kind of haven't looked back and kind of let my experiences kind of take it from there. I'm actually now, I mean, my husband is my surgery clerkship director's son. So like he was a mentor of mine. I met my husband through medicine, and he was passionate about it. He's also a surgeon now. So I kind of just let life experiences take me, and just knew, a lot of times when we can talk about, surgery is not really a female driven field, although it's evolving, but I just kind of continued to do what I wanted to do and didn't really let anyone tell me no.
Yeah, I would definitely echo kind of similar experiences. I mean, I knew I wanted to work with my hands. So, I mean, that kind of hands-on opportunity is what attracted me to surgery. Also, when I was in undergrad, I majored in biomedical engineering, and some of my research was done on machine, brain machine, body machine interfaces. So that kind of led me naturally to more of working with the brain. It's been an incredible experience in residency as well. I also met my husband during residency, so we're co-residents. So that's kind of makes it very challenging to coordinate our schedule together, but it's been like an amazing path so far for me as well.
It's amazing to hear how all of you guys are obviously in such different fields, and your journeys towards that field are obviously so different, and what inspired you to get to that point. So I think it's such a unique opportunity to have 4 different doctors in such diverse fields. So we probably have so many kids here today who want to go into neurosurgery or be a pediatrician, and or just go into surgery. So I was wondering, what is the best part of your career? That one thing that like you wake up every morning and like, this is why you love what you do every day.
Well, I'll unmute here. My career has definitely evolved over, over a decade, and before there was this mix as far as with research and everything, and that's I'm still very involved in it, but not as much as what we call a principal investigator. But there are 2 key things that have always driven me, and that is that patient interaction and education It's very different as far as the ICU level cardiology care, where there's a big focus on looking back as what may have contributed to someone having a heart attack or a stroke or something like that, versus having the discussion about really their quality of life and how do we do things as far as preventing either that first heart event or that next heart event. But I love education. I love it as far as from teaching to patient education, community, and people who are, in practice here in this clinic know I love to laugh. I love to share stories with patients, and I love to watch them being able to walk through life and life's journeys also together. And there's a lot of different levels to medicine. But what gets me up in the morning is really being able to share stories and watch patients progress over time and live their life. And we're kind of walking life's journey. So I think the key thing is that it's really the passion. And as was said, I had a master's in medical management, but I went back to school not too long ago. And so I agree with Dr. Ocampo about the life and the love of learning, the love of always being able to stay connected, learn what's new in the field. There are terms that exist now that didn't exist when many of us were training years ago. And so the evolution of medicine and what's possible and how we connect with patients, that's really what keeps me driving and going. So thank you.
Okay, so what actually keeps me driving every day is going to work and seeing my patients. Pediatrics to me is so much fun. I go and I play with these kids all day long, and I'm never bored by them. I love watching them grow and develop. And I'm actually old enough now that my former patients are now bringing their children to me. I've been here a long time, and it never ceases to amaze me how all of these babies and toddlers follow the same developmental milestones, and their little brains are just so amazing, and they're so much smarter than we actually give them credit. And I'm always so amazed by watching these little infants turn into little toddlers, and then into little children, and then young adults. And I just love that, and it just keeps me going every day, because the kids are great. They're amazing, and they say the funniest things sometimes, and you just can't help it. I'm laughing all day long when I'm seeing them, because they just come out with things that you would never expect, and they're honest. They tell it like it is. So for me, that's the most fun part of going to work every day, is just playing with the kids and being with the kids all day long.
For me, I think some of the highs are, a lot of times I see patients in the ER, especially when I'm on call, and sometimes one of the worst days of their lives. And, when you have that save of someone who comes in with, a perforated colon or something like that, and you get to see them walk out, hug their family and leave the hospital, that's a big win. Or I do a lot of endocrine oncology. So, a lot of my cancer patients, when we have successful outcomes and make it through surgery and you get to follow up those patients, I think those are the highs. And it's just being able to help people. We're so privileged to to be in all of us in the positions that we are, that we get to help people. And we are essential workers in society. So I think it's an honor, and I think that kind of itself keeps you motivated to do your best every day.
Yeah, I think what attracts a lot of people to surgical field is the ability to affect change very quickly. So, you do a case, an operation for someone that really changes their outcome very dramatically and quickly. In addition to, your passion for the field, I think it's the people you work with, the people who you share are like-minded and share the same passions. I really, really look forward to going to work every day and just interacting with my coworkers. So having that kind of very collegial environment is very important to, maintain the passion for your work.
Dr. Meng, I think it's so interesting that you bring up that point, because a lot of times I think people might feel pressured to go into certain fields or do it for other reasons. So I like that you highlighted the fact that there's more to just, what you want to do. It's the coworkers, or like Dr. Johnson said, being able to teach, integrating different parts of what people just generally think is medicine, which is definitely helping to treat the patient. There's this whole other aspect to getting to know your patient, being able to help them educationally and in that sense. So with that, I was hoping that we could maybe touch on the idea of work-life balance, and maybe how did you balance of family life and with children if you have, because I know that's a huge topic of conversation today, especially for kids who are, know how long this journey is, especially women.
It's a great question. I actually wanted to touch on just one step back about, the area and specialty. So many times when I may interview people who are considering medical school, they've already decided on what area they want to major in. And sometimes people don't know. And I really say it's okay to not know. It's okay to be open to the journey and to the process. And as far as work-life balance, that's actually one of the things I ask about, especially as people transition to going into residency and fellowship and higher levels of medical training. Sometimes it throws people to ask them during an interview, what do you like to do for fun? Tell me about your own passions. And sometimes very early, I already see that they've already lost some of that balance that comes with training and then trying to transition to a career. And so part of work-life balance, be it, family, significant others, children, no matter what it is as far as in life, is still being connected to life. So for me personally, I schedule for my time, my exercise time. Even prior to logging in, I was looking ahead at the week and saying, penciling in, I've pressed the button for the classes. I have already scheduled my exercise time. Our son is now 15, and so we very quickly have seen time pass as far as him being a little toddler, trying to crawl under the tables to now trying to get him to track practice. So time will pass by. And I always tell people as we go through training and as we progress in our careers, that's life that's going by. And it is okay to say no and to miss certain things. And it was one of those factors, even Jackie's mom, I was talking to her about this and I said, hey, I'm trying to get to my son's track practice, but it's that balance that we all have. And as women, yes, we do have to work harder as far as standing out in the fields that we're in and being leaders in the field, but at the same time understanding that this is time as far as enjoying our book clubs. I'm already jealous of Dr. Ocampo, like I need to get more reading in, but finding that passion and not losing it is what's going to be critical just to the success as far as not just in your career, but just getting through the training in the years ahead.
So for me, when when I first finished residency, my husband and I, we met in medical school at Georgetown, and then we did our residency training together in Charleston, South Carolina. He's a plastic surgeon, I'm a pediatrician. And then when he was in plastic surgery fellowship at Yale, that's when I got pregnant with my first one. And I lived an hour away from my parents. I grew up in the Bronx, and my mom was able to help take care of my daughter while I went to work. And then he said, we're moving to Florida. And I thought, we're what? And so we moved here with a 15-month-old, and I had to find daycare. And I found a job that I only had to work 3 days a week because I wanted to spend time with her. And being a pediatrician, you can do that. And you can probably do that in most fields. You can set up your schedule. And then when I got pregnant with my son, when I started thinking about it, it was very overwhelming. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have 2 children. And then I was starting my own practice at the time. But then I just took one day at a time. And that became my mantra: take one day at a time. And if you just get up in the morning, do what you need to do, you get through the day. And I made it work. And I didn't have any family here to help me. But then we made friends with a lot of people, and your friends become your family. And we helped each other out with our kids and after school activities. And if I needed to be at school, I just canceled patients in my office. As a solo pediatrician, I was able to do that. And I still had my nurse and my office staff there to answer questions. If I had to go do an activity with my kids at school, I never missed when they had a Thanksgiving breakfast for the parents. They would do a Christmas breakfast for the parents. I went to all of those things because those were very important to me to be a part of my children's lives. And also, it was very important that I got home at a reasonable time, because family time with having dinner together was always very important to me. I'm Italian. We grew up that way. You have dinner with your family every night. And so I did a lot of cooking on the weekends and made a lot of food ahead of time. And, you know, vacuum saved everything. When that vacuum sealer came out where you can vacuum the food and stick it in your freezer and save it, that was a godsend. No more freezer burn, and the food tasted as fresh as the day you made it. And so I could pull out things during the week and have them thaw in the refrigerator overnight, and during the day till we had dinner. And that was how I balanced it. I basically, you know, did that for my kids. We had dinner, and then I would sit down and help them review their homework and help them study. And we read every night. And that was my focus, and to help my kids. And I wanted them to be successful. And like Jessica said, I had no one in my family who was in medicine. And I don't know where I got the drive from. I was actually the first one on both sides of my family to graduate from college. My parents are immigrants from Italy, and then go on to a professional school. And so I did have that innate drive in me, but it was just I had to take that mantra, take one day at a time, and you will get through it. And I did. And now my kids are going to be turning 24 and 27 next week and the following week. And I'm very happy because they're off the family payroll and they've done magnificently well. But that's how I did it. I was able to balance work and family. And I was fortunate in the sense that I didn't have to overwork so hard in the office because my husband had a great job. But I still now do work full time. I do work 5 days a week. As my kids got older, going from 3 days a week to 4 days a week. And then when they were in middle school and high school, then college, I went to 5 days a week, and I was still able to balance everything. But you have to take one day at a time, and then you also need to take time for yourself, just like Heather Johnson said. And it's very important. I schedule my book club time. I actually do needle pointing also. I schedule my needlepoint classes. Now we're Zooming, we can't go in person anymore. And my bike riding and my running with my friends, everything is all on a set schedule. So you have to get a set schedule to help you get through the day. But you can make it work, and you'll have a very fulfilling life that way.
So my life's pretty crazy. I had my son 3 months before starting my surgical practice as an attending. I take call every fourth night and every fourth weekend. So it's hard. So you have to make the time that you're with the kids count. And I really always try to come home for bedtime, even if I'm on call and have cases later. If I have a break between cases, I run home and try to make it to bedtime if I can. It's hard. My husband's also a surgical resident, so we have help. I purposely picked to practice in South Florida because I have family here. My husband has family here. I was the kind of person who didn't like to take help at first, but now I've realized that accepting help is better for me, my health, my children's health. My family loves to see the kids too. So I'm learning as I go as well, because now I'm going to be working Q4 and having 2 kids, but I'm also picking paths in my career that allow me. I chose not to be a vascular surgeon or, a busy trauma surgeon. I'm an endocrine surgeon at heart. So, most of those are elective. So most of my emergencies are my call cases. And I eventually want to get more into academia and work more with the residents and students. And that might help me take less call in the future and kind of make the path that I want.
Yeah. So it's incredibly hard during residency to have kids, just because our schedule is so not flexible, but made it work because I have very, very supportive families. They have been a great help for me, and also during our training we're able to take some time to do research, so that's really great help because you're able to manage your time a bit better and customize to when and what you need to have done for the day. So that's when I had my children, and that's been much more manageable than if I had to do it during a clinical rotation. But people have done it, and they would just take some time off for their maternity leave. But it's incredibly difficult. So yeah, you have to accept help. Reevaluate how well you're doing, and if things are things are difficult, then always ask help. And programs, residency program are always very supportive, extremely supportive of residents who are, also having children at home as well.
Well, thank you all. When I hear all of your answers, I'm reminded of just, it's so incredible to hear how you guys can juggle so much and be so successful in your fields. It's truly something I aspire to do one day, whether it's being in a book club, doing needlepoint, having kids through residency. It's just so incredible. And I wanted to return back to Dr. Ocampo's point about taking one day at a time. I think that's so important right now, especially through everything that's happened with the pandemic, and kids are feeling burnt out. And someone asked a great question in the chat, which I was hoping we could now address. Someone asked, how do you maintain good mental health during residency and over the entirety of the path towards medicine?
So it's a great question as far as mental health. Even before residency, just getting through med school, I was looking at some of the questions in the chat as far as judgment, anxiety, things like that, as far as key topics, and seeing sort of these recurring themes. As far as the concerns that are listed in the chat, you are correct. There will always be questions as far as ability, skills, and unfortunately, as far as still with women in the field of medicine, it's changing, but it's not quite perfect as we need it. And, and just understanding that sometimes there will be people who it may seem as though they don't have any flaws and they're progressing really well. And I understand there's a lot of competition in the field. But as I read about the different concerns in the chat and anxiety and things like that, understand that everyone has things they need to focus and work on and grow as an individual. As far as mental health, these are all things, number one, being good to yourself. I mean, it may sound rather plain, but at the same time, understanding that you have to be kind to yourself. You have this path, you have this passion. It's not up to someone else to say that you cannot do it. You are committed to it. And I understand that resources will vary as far as mentors that may be physically present versus a bit more distant. But understanding the fact that you have the skills to be able to walk the journey and walk the path. And it can be very overwhelming as far as watching other people make other accomplishments or do other things, but at the same time, understanding that you have that ability to do so also. As been shared by some of the other panelists, I was also the first physician in the family. And it was kind of a running joke with me. My husband's not a doctor. I figured maybe I needed someone outside of medicine to make sure I had a good balance in life for me personally. But it's one of those things in which, as far as mental health, it starts from within. And being able to, and life is different. I mean, there were not the social media and iPhones or anything back when I was training. And so it was more a lot as far as physical one-on-one group support, friends, and much less technology. There were still the big book bags full of books dragging you on your back. But the key thing is finding that small group and that small circle that can help get you through, be it this wonderful group right here, as far as with what Jackie has set up, or a bit more intimate once we're able to get back to be face to face. But no matter as far as who's around you, the key thing, it has to be internal. You have to be at peace with you. And that goes back to balance. That goes back to finding ways to clear your mind, clear your head. Someone mentioned mindfulness in the chat. I did personally do training in mindfulness and meditation, but it was much later in my life. But at the same time, understanding that I still had to find peace and happiness, even if it was going for a walk, just to be able to make it through just everyday stressors. And be it walking with the toddler or something else that came with, our son being younger at the time. But those, no matter how short it is, from cuddling up with the little one at bedtime, as Jessica mentioned, even if it's just for a brief moment, that brings that peace that's needed. And so be it your pet, significant other, friends, whatever it takes, understanding that this is life, and that support and that bridge and that internal happiness is what's going to get you through.
Well, I couldn't agree more with what Dr. Heather Johnson said. She spoke so eloquently about everything. But again, for your mental health, let's face it, residency is tough, and well, at least when I did it, we were on call mostly every fourth night, and you're up all night long and up all the next day. And I know the rules have changed a little bit, but the programs are still hard, and you need to find that time where you can take that time for yourself, and hopefully you'll make some good friendships. I still have great friends from residency that I keep in touch with, and we always meet up at pediatric meetings. We try to connect, to catch up that way. So it's mixing business with social, just to catch up and see each other. But you have to try to make time for yourself, no matter how busy and how hard things are. And if you don't take care of yourself, you won't enjoy what you're doing. And residency and even medical school can be very tough, very demanding on your life, on your hours. And I chose not to have children. Well, my husband and I should say, we got married during our residency, and we chose to wait on having children till after residency was over, because it would have been just too difficult. And I remember even in my class at Georgetown, women who were married and were having babies, and I couldn't even fathom, how can you have a baby when you're in medical school and you're trying to study and learn everything? And then even in residency, we had several female residents who had gotten pregnant, and had children. And my closest friend in residency had twins while we were in residency together. And I thought, oh, that's double trouble right there. And, but you have to make decisions that will work with you, and just find that time for yourself, whether it's meditating, reading, running, spending time alone, or spending time with a close friend. It's something you have to do, because it is going to be tough. And then and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And when you're done with residency, then you'll have your chance, to start your job, and hopefully it won't be as tough as residency was, but you'll have a different set of circumstances that you'll be dealing with at that point. But it's really like Dr. Heather Johnson said, you have to find that inner peace, and be at peace with yourself, and really take good care of yourself. And hopefully it'll help you get through anything.
I'm just going to talk briefly because they said it great, but I think too, you have to do what's right for you. I knew that, surgery residency was tough. I was married when I was a resident, but I chose not to have kids when I was a resident, because I knew I wanted to put the hospital first and my training. And then I chose to have kids after I turned 30, which, it was a personal decision for me. So I think, there's not one right mold. I'm happy I waited a little bit, because I was really, in the trenches, I felt like, for residency, got my knowledge base, and I'm still learning every single day. But for me, it was better to wait, but, to each their own. So just know that, everyone does not have to get married at age 22 and have a kid by age 20. You don't have to fit the one female mold out there. So that's all.
Great. I'm just learning so much from everyone else also. I just want to add, I think people who are really motivated, high achieving, they tend to be really hard on themselves. And I think that's something every mistake everyone makes. So just be, like you said, be kind to yourself, and really, realize that everyone can make mistakes, and not everyone else who are seemingly doing great are perfect either. So
well, thank you all for your answers. I especially like Dr. Meng, and actually all of you highlighted how important it is to focus on yourself throughout this journey. And I think that's so difficult today when we're comparing ourselves at every point of our life, whether it's in medicine or the way we look. So thank you for highlighting those different aspects. I think it's so important. And off of that, I wanted to move into a slightly different direction. There were a couple of questions in the chat regarding resources and getting into medicine, which I think is extremely important to highlight. And one reason why I started this Discord to, help encourage kids to give advice. So someone asked, what advice do you have for high school students who don't have hospitals or medical centers nearby to volunteer, or at STEM clubs at their schools, how can they still pursue their interests without the right resources?
That's a great question. So there may not necessarily be a medical center. I think I missed some of the question nearby, but one of the things that's been available is that a lot of universities and colleges, even prior to COVID, have been offering online and or, as far as in person, even ways to be able to connect high school students to at least science-based interests and fields. The other thing is that the world is a lot smaller now too. And so there are ways, as far as sometimes people reaching out and whatever that closest hospital or medical system is, as far as being able to connect with, seeing what physicians, may overlap with some of your areas of interest. But I know a lot of universities are definitely offering some science programs, interactions, even if it's on the weekends, or sometimes even conferences and things in which it allows people that are students, high school students who are interested in the sciences, begin to connect. You'll get to meet other people, and then that's how you're able to be connected as far as some other at least science-based experience. As far as this, for example, this Discord, the whole STEM clubs, as far as physically one unit within a high school or something like that, now it's much more connected online. There are a lot of different options that are out there. I've learned by, a lot of the mentees as far as resources that are there. I had to ask Jackie's mom what's a Discord. I didn't know what it was. And so I'm definitely learning here. But this is an example that your involvement can be beyond what's physically within under your roof of your school now. So the world is definitely open and a lot more connected.
So yes, that is a great question, but I don't think you have to worry so much about only trying to do something with a hospital. You can try to reinvent yourself and see if there's other community projects or things you can get involved with, other types of volunteer work. You just need to be innovative and try to see what is available in your area if you don't have the opportunity to do volunteer work. And let's face it, this past year with COVID, research labs shut down. Students who had volunteer opportunities in research labs and hospitals, no one's been allowed to do that. And we don't know when that will open up again, hopefully soon as more people are getting vaccinated. But I think, our world is going to be a little bit more cautious because of what happened with COVID. And it's just trying to be creative and thinking of other things that you could do in your community where you can make yourself available and be helpful, and volunteering with disabled children, maybe leading a program for them, taking them to a park or an outing or a museum or something, or working with residents in a nursing home facility and maybe getting children together to go visit them and doing an arts and crafts day. There's a lot of different things that you can do that doesn't have to be hospital based. And I think if you're creative enough and start thinking and brainstorming, even with friends and family, other ideas, you'll be able to come up with something to help you. That medical schools love that. They love when you're doing something creative and doing something different from everybody else. And I think that'll be a feather in your cap to help you with trying to get into medical school.
I agree. Sorry, the baby's crying in the back, but I serve on the admissions committee for one of the medical schools. And honestly, it is the unique experiences that really tend to make people stick out, and the longevity. Like if you show commitment to something, I don't necessarily care that, you spent 5 years shadowing this one doctor. If you, went on your own and did something and showed that this was something we were passionate about and dedicated to, that sometimes shows more. Not to say that there's a problem with shadowing too, but I also wouldn't just limit yourself so early on. Like in high school, I did a bunch of different activities because, you never know what things shape your experience. So I don't think you have to, I get a lot of questions from high school students saying, well, how do I become a surgeon right away? I wouldn't just focus on surgery. I think you should get experience in other things as well, just to make sure, you know, you're well-rounded and that it's truly what you want to do. Keep an open mind. I know I definitely didn't know I was going to end up where I was now when I was in high school. So, and I think online, look at it. I know the American College of Surgeons has mentorship programs where they assign, you know, interested high school and college students with community surgeons. You know, I think the internet is going to open a lot of doors for you guys to kind of get connected to people.
I'll just add that a lot of the skills that would make you a good doctor, they're not just, you know, things you learn in school, right? So there's good communication skills, organization skills, and being able to work as a team. And there's so many things that you can do extracurricular wise that's not medically related at all, where you can gain those skills. So I think there's a lot of opportunity outside of even just medical related activities that you can kind of showcase what kind of skills you can bring to your portfolio.
And if I could, sorry,
Yeah,
could
no.
I add? I think also too, with just what Dr. Meng was just saying about skills and bringing to the portfolio, I saw a few questions about, you know, age is entering the medical field and entering medical training. Remember, it's not about the age; it's about the experiences that you've already had in life and what you've done and how that overlaps as far as your passion for medicine. So everyone, if there's one recurring theme on this panel, is everyone has their own path and their own journey, and those skills that you've acquired already in life. I know some people mention as far as the age they're entering, either training or continuing on. Same thing with you know, hello, as far as all the different international representation I see in the chat room. Again, variety as far as culture and experiences, and that's allows you to be much more open and open-minded as far as a physician. So we each have our own stories and our own background. And I think that's outstanding when it comes to being able to grow and be a leader in medicine. And also, as was shared, as far as showing your experience on paper to the admissions teams.
And Dr. Johnson, I'd like to ask a follow-up. We had a couple questions in the chat about being a minority and a woman. So would you be willing to elaborate a bit about giving advice about breaking down barriers and the movement for representation?
It's a great question. Especially in cardiology, as far as women in cardiology and as far as minority women in cardiology, the numbers definitely get slimmer. And sometimes there's this focus of people trying to find mentors that look like them. And so I always start by saying, you may not find a mentor that's going to look like you. Mentors come in all shapes and sizes and forms and genders and backgrounds. And so the key is that although you may feel as though you may feel a bit more comfortable, just understand that the key is to find really support and mentors from all areas, from all backgrounds, and to be able to A, believe in yourself, and B, as being able to find as much support and resources as possible. As the way medicine is, I think Jessica mentioned, as a surgeon, we have a ways to go as far as women, and even further as far as a way to go as far as, you know, women of color when we're in, especially in various fields. But understanding the fact that, number one, you have to believe in yourself that you can do it the same way all of us had to understand that we could do it, no matter what the additional barriers or concerns may be. Also, the key is, as you grow, just because you may transition to a different training program or to a different level of training, don't dismiss those prior mentors that you've had. There are some people who I have known as mid 90s. I mean, they've been mentors and they've become colleagues and friends, and you begin to grow a circle, and your locations will change, your interactions will change as far as where you're going to be. But just know that you always have a support network. And over time, you know, it's gone from more face to face to, you know, the internet and social media really has broken down a lot of the communication barriers. And so you're able to find people, although they may not be close, as far as providing support. But for anyone, as far as, you know, what some concerns may be, as far as different, unfortunately, either conscious or subconscious biases that may occur against you, understanding that you are able to move forward and do things, and making sure you have the support that's needed to help you transition to each step. I have to say that I know sometimes too, other ways to be able to find support is through different national organizations so in addition to the community that you have here, a lot of national organizations are now opening up to younger and younger levels of trainees. And so it allows you to meet more people as far as through various backgrounds. And, it can be isolating sometimes, but as you grow over time, that circle will get larger, and hang in there and just know that there are people out there ready to support you.
I just want to add one quick thing. You also have control a little bit about where you end up. When I was on the surgery residency interview path, there were some programs that ask questions that aren't legal to ask. Am I married? Do I plan on having kids? Blah, blah, blah. Even though, let's say some of those were the top name programs, they weren't taught for me. So I went to programs where I saw women on the faculty, where I saw other women residents who were happy. That didn't make me feel like, oh, I was filling a quota, or, had to be ashamed that I do want kids. So I think just don't feel like you have to go to those programs either. You have some control of where you end up.
I think those are, awesome points, and you guys are both touching on. I think we have time for like one last question. So I was hoping we can expand to the rest of the panelists and both Dr. Johnson and Dr. Buicko again on, could you elaborate on your biggest hurdle as a woman in medicine and how you overcame that, and maybe one piece of advice?
The biggest hurdle that I notice is that it's very easy for women to be dismissed in the room. And I see Dr. Ocampo nodding her head there. Especially even in national conferences, I would remember where sometimes it would be assumed that you would be a nurse or a physician assistant, and I adore nurses and physician assistants. However, I am a physician, and it's very easy as far as a woman to be mistaken for not being a physician, or not being at your level of academia or within the field. And so the biggest piece of advice is that you have to stand up for yourself. You have to be your own advocate. You have to blow and toot your own horn as far as your accomplishments, and believe in yourself. We did not touch on the whole imposter syndrome discussion as far as whether or not we believe we belong in a room, but you do belong in a room. And it is, no one else is going to take the time to really have you stand up and stand out. So you have to do that for yourself. As women, we're sometimes a bit more quiet about it, but understanding that, yes, it is a competitive field across the way. There are different discussions about, I see in the chat room about, where you should practice, how you should practice, etc. But outside of those fine key details, the key thing is that you have to be your own advocate. You have to stand up and you have to present yourself and let people know who you are, and that you deserve to be in that room, around that boardroom, and at that patient side. Thank you.
So I totally agree with Dr. Heather Johnson. I didn't reveal that, when I was at Georgetown, I had two passions, general surgery and pediatrics. And I actually applied for general surgery during the match, but I met my husband during my fourth year. He was in my class, but didn't know I was going to end up dating him. But we didn't do a couples match because we were just starting to date. And I matched in general surgery at Georgetown. I had a 7-year spot, which meant after the first 2 years, I would have to go out and do research for 2 years and then go back. And he matched in Charleston, South Carolina in a 5-year spot. And I was the only female intern out of 14 interns. There were only 2 other women in the program, a 5th year and a 7th year. And I was overlooked all the time. Even in the operating room, the surgeons would always let the other male intern start practicing on how to sew up a patient. And I had to put my foot down, and I actually had to say, hey, I'm Italian. I grew up sewing. Let me sew. And I practiced my knots at home all the time. And they were actually pretty impressed that I was able to do these one-handed knots, because I spent my time practicing when I wasn't on call in the hospital, but I had to speak up all the time. Now, granted, I'm going to date myself. I graduated Georgetown in 1988, and it was a different field than it was now. There were only maybe 30 women in my class, 170 men. We were not allowed to go, we were not allowed to do the urology rotation because the head of the urology department would not allow women. We were not allowed to go to the HIV clinic in the southern part of Washington, D.C. to help with the HIV patients. And some women in my class became very outspoken. And who ended up on the urology rotation by accident? Me. I didn't ask for it. And the attending urologist, who was also the chairman, ignored me the entire 2 weeks. He would ask a question, I would answer it. He wouldn't acknowledge my answer. And he would look to one of the other 5 men in my group. And then finally, some of them started saying, Dr. So-and-so, she answered the question, and he would just turn around and walk away. And it was very demeaning. And to have that experience and I felt like a minority when I was in medical school and even in residency, because when I was in residency, I was moonlighting in the adult ER at our county hospital because I still had my ATLS training from surgery. I switched from surgery to pediatrics. That's a whole long story, but I was able to be an attending because they needed people who could put in chest tubes and central lines, and I was still ATLS certified, advanced trauma life support certified. And one day I was standing at the counter. So here's me, I'm only 5'2", short, attending. And here, actually I'd finished residency. So I was working in the county ER. So I was the attending, and I had this very tall, Black fellow with me, or resident in internal medicine. And this man came in demanding to speak to the doctor. And he just said to me, watch, he's going to go over to one of the male nurses. And sure enough, he did. And he wouldn't believe that we were both doctors. And, so we have come a long way, but you still need to stand up and speak for yourself. When I was interviewing for surgery, I had surgery in Charleston where my husband matched and I didn't, and then I tried to reapply. They asked those questions. What if you get pregnant while you're in residency? They had never had one female ever go through their program. Not one female was ever accepted into their 5-year program. They had transitionals who got weeded out after the first or second year. And I had been asked that question on many surgical interviews, except Georgetown. Georgetown was so supportive. I was so impressed that even when I was getting ready to leave to go to pediatrics, the head of our department said, please don't leave. I will create a spot for your husband. But he didn't want a 7-year spot. He had a 5-year spot. But Charleston, when they asked me that question, I just turned around and said, how do you even know I can have kids? I was so incensed by that point. And the attending was so taken by such surprise, like, oh, you can't have children. And I said, that's none of your business. And I knew it was over. I wasn't going to get a spot. But you have to stand up for yourself. And like Dr. Buicko said, those programs are not for you. There are programs that are very supportive. We are the nurturing parent. We are the childbearing parent, and we can't put our lives on hold while we're in residency or training. And people have to be able to work around that and help you with that. You do the best you can while you're pregnant, and then, you take off your time for your maternity leave, and they have to deal with that. And then when you go back, you work your hardest and your fullest potential. But you need to stand up for yourself and not accept programs that will treat you as a second-class person. And I didn't. And this was back in the late 80s, and I wasn't going to accept anybody telling me that. But I ended up leaving surgery so I could be with my husband. I said, well, I am going to get married now, so maybe pediatrics would be better for us. And I ended up matching in pediatrics the following year in Charleston. So it worked out great. And that's it.
Yeah, I think we all probably have stories of that. I remember the first day I was so excited to be a chief surgical resident. We walk in on a room of a patient. I did a Whipple which is a big pancreas surgery. And the patient's husband talked to my ophthalmology intern first day, as opposed to me as, the chief resident in the room, and didn't want to hear anything I said. It was asking basically an ophtho intern who knew nothing questions. And, you could get upset about it, or, you just accept it and, can move on. Like if you get bogged down by every time that happens, then it can kind of weigh on you mentally. And the imposter syndrome is real. I'm in a practice right now. Luckily, there's another female in my practice, but the two major surgeons are in their late, in their 60s, and they're big, strong men, and I'm one of their partners. And when I'm rounding on their patients, sometimes I'm like, wow, should I be here? But I am qualified to be there. I did my training. I excelled at my training, and it's just, yes, I look younger. Yes, I might not be who you think your surgeon is, but I'm dedicated, I'm focused, and if people want me to help them, I'm more than happy to. So you can get bogged down in people's opinions, but sometimes you also learn that if someone comes to your office and is not happy with how I look to be a surgeon, I don't want them as my patient, and they can find a surgeon that better fits them. And I've had that happen. I've actually told a patient that we might not be the fit for one another because he was asking me questions about my religion, my social thing. I just said, you know what, I think we're going to mutually kind of separate. So you just got to stick up for what you believe in too.
I think there's definitely a slow improvement in the field as well. There's a few years ago, we had a cohort of 4 residents and 3 of them were female. So we're seeing more and more female applicants to neurosurgery in particular. So there's hope that we'll have more and more people interested, and we'll have more balanced division of female and male residents in the program.
Wow. Well, there are so many questions in the chat, and, I only wish we could address them all, but I just wanted to leave off by saying thank you to all of the panelists. You guys were incredible. And the whole discussion about imposter syndrome, I'm sure we could go into detail about that. So many kids definitely talk about that today, but I think one of something that stuck with me is Dr. Johnson saying you have to be your own advocate. And I think that's so important, because if you believe in yourself, like all of you guys have said, you are going to be successful. So I'm thinking we can do this again another time. I'm going to save all of the questions in the chat, but for now, we're going to be taking a 15-minute break before we start our PhD panel. And that is all for now, but thank you to everyone who came to this session. And I want to give, again, a big thank you to Dr. Ocampo, Dr. Meng, Dr. Buicko, and Dr. Johnson. Thank you all.